Joining us now, NBC News Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Dilanian. What was it like in there, Ken?
That exchange captured the tone of the day, Katie, and it was such an incredible contrast to all the hearings I've been covering down in Florida with Judge Aileen Cannon, who absolutely deferred to the idea that Donald Trump was different and special because he was running for president and was a former president. Judge Tanya Chutkan was having none of that. On substance, she appeared to adopt the prosecution's view of how to proceed, and we may find out later today because she said she intends to enter a scheduling order as soon as today. And of course, the prosecution wants to immediately get to the issue of immunity. They want each side to craft detailed briefs on the question of what evidence should come in and what should be excluded. And that could include new evidence that the public has never seen, including grand jury testimony and FBI 302 notes and other kinds of things before the election. That'll be in the public record. So that's interesting. And there may even be a hearing on this if she adopts that schedule. Trump's lawyers took a posture of just wanting to delay, and other motions, they wanted to consider the question of whether Jack Smith was illegally appointed, which in this circuit, the D.C. circuit, that has been roundly rejected, despite what Judge Cannon ruled down in Florida. So that's where it is. I mean, this was a scheduling hearing. It was brisk. It was tidy. It lasted about an hour and 15 minutes, and we're expecting a ruling later today, Katie.
Ken Dilanian. Ken, thank you. Joining us now, New York Law School professor of law and former Manhattan Assistant District Attorney Rebecca Roiphe. So we didn't get a trial date today, and Judge Chutkan even said scheduling a trial date is going to be useless because anything that happens in this case is going to get appealed to the Supreme Court.
Right. I mean, you know, what special counsel Jack Smith did was kind of genius, which is he went and he sought this superseding indictment, and it had two purposes. One was to try to streamline the process so that he could get this decision as quickly as possible, and the other was to interpret the Supreme Court decision about immunity and obtain an indictment that was in line with his interpretation of what that opinion meant.
So much of this hearing centered on the conversations that Donald Trump had with Vice President Pence and whether those are immune. Trump's team argues they are immune, and that if those conversations are not a part of this case, the whole thing falls apart. Obviously, the special counsel argues differently. They believe it is outside the purview of official acts, and they you know, it's an argument that they're going to make. It might not win. If the Pence stuff ends up being stricken from the indictment, do they still have a case?
I think they have a hard case if it ends up getting stricken. I mean, what he did was he cast the vice president in his role as the presider over the legislature. And by doing that, made it look like these were less about executive official acts and therefore more along the lines of unofficial acts of a campaign. And so we'll see if that will work. The Supreme Court was not clear on this issue. And so this is a question that's going to go.
Why weren't they clear on it? They had the indictment. Judge Chutkan mentioned this. They had the indictment. If they thought there was no merit to the case, they could have dismissed the whole thing.
I mean, sometimes when there's a lack of clarity, there's a lack of agreement. And I think that's what Jack Smith is banking on, because if he can peel off a couple of the conservative justices to agree with him about Mike Pence, then he can win this argument. And so I think maybe it was a lack of clarity because they couldn't get as all of the justices to sign on to that particular
Does that
question.
mean they couldn't get all of the conservative justices?
They couldn't get all of the conservative justices. Exactly. That's it.
So potentially that could stay in if it gets appealed to the Supreme Court. Yep. But what about the other stuff that's there? I mean, you have the phone call to the Georgia Secretary of State. You have all of the federal or the fake electors, all of that coordination that went beyond his Washington dealings.
Right. So the other strategy that Jack Smith took was to interpret a civil case that came down about immunity. And in that civil case, the court in Washington, D.C. drew a distinction between Trump as a campaigner and Trump as the president. And so those acts Jack Smith tries to portray as acts of a candidate rather than acts of a president. If he can convince Judge Chutkan and if he can convince a couple of those conservative justices to agree with him on that point, then he can go ahead.
So what's next?
What's next is waiting to see what she says and how quickly she can resolve this question, and the speed is important. As much as she says this is not about the presidency, the presidential election is looming. And
if this doesn't happen before the election, how could it possibly?
I mean, it seems really, really unlikely, but if she streamlines it, it's possible.
All right, Rebecca Roiphe.
Thank you.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
Thank you very much.